The truth is, when we speak about our grandmother's songs, I'm wondering, what did my grandmother sing to me? And she didn't. It doesn't mean Iraqi women did not sing. It just meant that the tradition was broken with the displacement. And the actual words of Jilala is what she was singing is, we came and went, we gained this child, and they said the name of the child. So when she sang, she said Shalom, the name of her husband, actually.
What you're saying about it getting lost is that these researchers talk about that because it was their power when they started learning Hebrew, they didn't need that as their power. They had Hebrew, so they didn't need to hold on to these songs anymore, and it started getting lost. If you're losing the songs, then you're losing the language, then you're losing parts of your tradition because they can't be translated.
It's all about that you are a blessing. You are a blessing. When do we sing to our children that they are a blessing?
Ayuni is a term of endearment passed from grandmother to granddaughter. These are the stories of our Middle Eastern and North African Jewish grandmothers. Hi, I'm Drora Rusi, an American-born Hungarian Jew married to an Israeli-born Yemenite Jew.
Hi, I'm Dalia Arusi Diveroli, and my kids are represented by 4 communities: Yemen, Ashkenaz, Libya, and Italy.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sassoon, and I'm an Australian-born Iraqi Jew. Come explore with us traditions that have traveled through many lands to our hands today.
Hi, welcome back, and thank you so much for sending in your comments because we got some interesting feedback. Seems to be a discrepancy whether everybody's grandmother called them Ayuni. And we heard immediately from Dr. Lilach Terjman that she has 2 Moroccan grandmothers. One of them would call her Lamri, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong. One of them would call her Leomri. And so between the 2 of them, it has nothing to do with Ayuni. And we just thought between being Iraqi, Moroccan, and Libyan, we were going to have the same thing across the Middle East and North Africa.
And actually, my Syrian friend also told me that her grandmother never called her Ayuni. She would call her any name of a dessert, and she said she would pinching her cheeks, but she never called her Ayuni. So I guess it's not as widespread as we thought, but it still is a cool concept of what would your grandmother call you. And now for our episode.
Okay, so this is the episode about singing. And the truth is, when we speak about our grandmother's songs, I'm wondering, what did my grandmother sing to me? And she didn't. She didn't sing to me. And this is such an embarrassing truth. But it doesn't mean Iraqi women did not sing. It just meant that the tradition was broken with the displacement. And I went to my adopted grandmother down the road. I asked her the question I wish I asked my grandmother. Please tell me the songs from Iraq. Tell me your songs. So the truth is, the first response she had was that her mother sang, but they weren't songs. They were lamentations. They were kinot. Because she used to lose a lot of children. Her children would die at the age of 1, 2. There was a lot of child mortality in Iraq and a lot of grief. So her mother carried a lot of grief. And she would go to the top of their house. They used to have roofs. So she'd go up the stairs and hoping her children would not hear, the girls who did survive, including Shulamit, would not hear her tears. She would sing to herself and cry. And that was a very moving story that she told me. But then she also said to me when I asked her, "Girl, can you sing me something your mother sang?" She sang me a lullaby, which we're going to share with you. And it was very moving because her husband, Shalom, began singing with her. So even though I don't know songs from my grandmother, I feel through my research and through interviewing grandmothers like Shulamit, we can recover songs that have been lost, traditions that are lost because of displacement, because of language loss, and intergenerational breakage. So here's the song.
لو برنا رحنا وجينا حصلناه الشالوم شالله بأمغو يتهنى.
So the jilala was like a swing that they would push the baby on, like a wooden kind of swing that was like a bed. And the mothers would push the babies and even little toddlers or children and sing to them this song. Okay, this is what Shulamit told me. She said there were small jalalas, so like small cribs that rocked, and big bed-sized jalalas. And the mothers would swing the baby or small children on them and sing this lullaby. And she would sew and embroider as she sang to her children. And the actual words of Jilala is what she was singing is, we came and went, we gained this child, may say the name of the child. So when she sang, she said Shalom, the name of her husband, actually. And we gained, and God gave him to enjoy from his life. May he be happy. So it's almost like the lullaby is a blessing, and it includes God, which is also very Jewish and Middle Eastern, where everything is very God centered and full of faith and trust. And as I said, the child mortality was very high, especially at the turn of the century before penicillin. So children and the fact they lived was something that was very precious and had to be protected. And I guess the lullaby was like a blessing that protected them as well. So I'm really happy to have recovered this lullaby at least.
And so I think now that we understand that there was this tradition of singing, I think we can look back that it goes way, way back to biblical times. I mean, when we look at the Torah, we see Miriam singing. In the Tanakh, we see Devorah singing. And there's also, as you mentioned, the
Mekonenot.
as you mentioned, there's also that history of mekonenot, of
Lamentations.
yeah, women lamenters. And with
But it's more than lamenters, at least in Yemen. Like Mekonenot is actually wailing.
it could be also in the Tanakh. I mean, when they're mentioned in Yirmiyahu, they're called upon to get the crowd to start crying. So that was their job. It wasn't just something that necessarily came out naturally. I think with Devorah and Mary, maybe it came out more naturally, and it was something, a celebration, a recounting of events, and all these different versions of women singing in the Tanakh are something that we'll talk about now, about that we see throughout history with women in different countries talking about recounting stories, talking about celebrations and lamenting. And these are all things that come up in different communities through the women, through their songs.
And it's interesting how they carry the grief, though. The songs carry such joy, and yet the songs also carry the grief of the community. Like speaking about the wailing. One of the things I read was Yitzhak Avishu's book on Iraqi woman songs, and one of the things his mother shared the songs with him, and when he asked her to sing the songs of the lamentations, the wailing, she wouldn't do it about children or young people dying. So they'd have to lament also when young people died. She'd only share the songs of the old people because she didn't want to bring any bad omen by sharing songs of the younger people dying. And that was also very interesting that she was the connection. He turned to her as a professor for his research to capture the songs.
And when you go back to Yemen, they had this whaling culture. Tova Gamliel writes about it a lot. But the whaling culture, they actually had professional whalers. And whalers is her word, not mine. So that's why I was, yeah. Kina usually we say is a lamentation, but in Yemen we're actually whalers, and I guess it's more in line with what you were saying, Dalia, about Yirmiyahu, because that's their goal. One of the people that she interviewed said that in Sana'a that was really their lives, because anybody who knows Sanani Yemenites, so like from the main city, they're very reserved and they don't let out emotion. And I often compare them to Briskers, actually, that they're very strict in their practice, and they're very closed emotionally. So this is one time where somebody's got to get you to cry, because otherwise it's all in. And like you said, mortality was awful. So this was something professionally that they did, and you didn't have to be ashamed because you were meant to cry. So they would go accompany the men even to the to the graves because the women did not go to the graves, and they would wail and get people crying. I just think that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, and maybe that's why I never heard my grandmother. I mean, my let's say my aunts on one side sing because they were from Sana'a and very reserved, not in saying what they had to say, but just in showing emotion. And singing is something that usually evokes a lot of emotion. My grandmother on the other side, who's not from Sana'a, she's from Menachem, does like to sing. I've never heard her sing in Arabic. I've heard her sing in Hebrew. But that goes back to previous episodes that I said that she tried to be very modernized, um, based on when she came to Israel and the things that she had experienced. But I think what's interesting is that these lamenters were singing in front of men, and a lot of the women's songs weren't done in front of men. Like this was somebody whose job was to sing in front of the men and also to get the men to cry. But I think now we can turn to the songs that were not sung in front of men, that were sung in the kitchen, that were sung in the home. And those are really interesting because they're not, they evoke emotion. These songs that were sung in the home could be passing on information, they could be passing on rituals, they could be passing on ancient wisdom. All these things were done by women. And I think what we can now also discuss is that they were passing on a language. Women didn't necessarily learn Hebrew. A lot of the men's songs were in Hebrew, at least in Yemen or I know in Morocco, the women were singing in their dialect. And the songs were a way of passing on that dialect. So maybe one of you can talk about a community that you know a lot about.
Well, I can talk about Yemen a little bit. Again, we never heard it. We didn't know this, but I think that a lot of them, when they went to America or went to Israel or wherever else they went in the world, uh, those from Yemen kind of let it go, let their wanted to bring in the new, just like many immigrant communities. But now people really want to connect to their past, and some of the older people are understanding what richness they have that their mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers left to them. And so one of them I found is Leah Avraham. And I just want to mention one more thing. First is it wasn't only practical things that they talked about in terms of history and culture and all that. They had some kind of racy things in there too. Leah Avraham is amazing, and she really came back and brought back what her mother and her grandmother would sing to her and do it. So one of them I just wanted to share is, and she shared so much with us. She is amazing. That this one is actually just about everyday work and how the woman who's singing it went and she had to hold a basket on her head with water and sticks, and there's no way it all happened, is what Leah said. But it's the concept of, oh, it's overbearing, and then one day she gets to go to the bakery, or actually the big communal oven, and she gets so excited because there's this really cute guy there, and so I'm just going to play a little bit of the song because I just think it's worth sharing.
Can you explain who Leah Abrahami is?
She's just a woman who is a performer. She sings, she dances, and in doing that, she recreates the stories that were there. I mean, she tells us what types of songs were there and she shares them. So as you watch the video, you see her dancing as well. So that was also part of it, is there was internalizing of the message in dance. And again, probably not in Sana, but so we're not talking about the main cities, but a lot of the villages, a lot of the places around it. It was a way to incorporate life, because really it was just from morning to night, it was working, right? And so here it was a little bit of an outlet within that. That's the way I see it anyway.
I think one of the cool things that she also said was that she didn't go to study the songs, like the songs and the dance. She said she just soaked in, and that's how they would pass things along. Like no one was sitting around giving them a singing lesson, and nobody was showing them dance moves. She just attended events like henna's where her mother would sing. She would hold on to her dress and just soak it in, and then that's how she got it to pass on to us. As you see, she also does like performances. It's not just something that she's doing in her home to help spread that heritage.
Right. And holding on to the dress, I just want to say we have one more clip and I have to share it. So we're if you watch for a moment or listen for a moment, you'll hear her song about holding on to the dress and that she talks about listening to at the henna. So going back to a previous episode, but I wanted to add in the clips here as we're talking about music. And she talks about her being the kapara of her mom. And so listen for a moment.
So what's so amazing about Leah Avrahami is that she continued the tradition naturally because that's what she was brought up with. And it reminds me of the food episode we had where we said that the food gets passed down hand to hand. So also with the songs, it is grandmother to daughter to granddaughter. And for some reason in my family, I guess there was a breakage somewhere. And I think it is because of the displacement. There was a breakage. And especially when you go through trauma, the response to trauma is silence. In Iraq, the truth is, when you speak about the private setting of song and the public, there were public women singers in Iraq. There were the Dakakat. It was a band of women, and they would actually sing at really public events by the terms of Ezekiel. In El Chifel, they would sing on Shavuot when all the pilgrims would come together, and they'd play drums, and their singing would be in a public space. And I actually have the name here of one of the singers that Avishur speaks about, Masuda al-Bombalia. I actually love her name. And she would sit with 3 or 4 women from her band, and they would play and be known as these players. And they'd go to hennas and weddings, and they were very much part of keeping and continuing women's tradition. And I think about this, and I think that people really are doing real work, like Sarah Manasseh in England. She's a doctor of music and recovering these songs of the Dakakat and their stories. And it's just so beautiful. And then I wondered to myself, so where do we have our songs in our lives now? How do we continue our songs? And I think when I grew up on Shabbat, my dad would sing songs, and they would reflect Iraqi. That's how I know all my Iraqi songs. That's the truth. I do know Iraqi songs a lot from those Shabbat meals. So I think the songs are now still being passed, but just in a different way. And
Are
I
they
guess
more prayerful songs that your father?
they were the prayer songs. Shalom leben dodi, El Galil, songs that, like, even when Ariella Daniels, she was singing songs that she grew up with, Zmirot, and that's the Indian Jewish tradition, the Bnei Israel tradition, and they were the same as the ones my father sang. And then I realized, oh, the Iraqi merchants, when they went to India, they brought their songs, and that's how the community knows them. I can't imagine another way of them knowing the same songs as the ones I know from Iraq, because my family has no Indian connection whatsoever. So the songs, first of all, tell a story. We still have songs, but these are more public, I guess, songs, the synagogue songs. They're not the women's songs. And the women's songs are more personal, and they also adapted the words according to what they were going through. Like Shulamit's mother, when she would sing her lamentations, I guess she might have a song she'd sing about, but the song would be, she'd adapt the words according to her feelings, and that would express the emotion. Is that there's a lot of topics we've brought up here, but I'm just like curious to know how we bring song into our own lives, what we've lost, but also how do we preserve the songs we come from?
Well, like you said, there are some people doing some really interesting research on it, and some of them are also performing them. So, like Vanessa Paloma is somebody who researches Hakatia songs of northern Morocco, which Hakatia is a northern Moroccan dialect of Judeo Spanish, and she researches and performs. So, that's her way, I think, of bringing them to life and continuing them. And what's interesting with her research, and Edwin Sarusi also did research on this, and Nina Pinto Abaxis also, and they talk about how these women's songs were not in Hebrew, and them singing in Hakatia was their power because they didn't learn Hebrew, and Hakatia, their local dialect, was theirs, and it was theirs to pass on. And they did it through the songs, and they did it in the kitchen, they did it when they were collecting things outside, but they were always singing and always in a way of passing along, whether it was wisdom, whether it was talking, even like talking about family purity, like those were in the songs, like all these topics that they wanted to pass on to the next generation was done. And what you're saying about it getting lost is that these researchers talk about that because it was their power when they started learning Hebrew, they didn't need that as their power. They had Hebrew, so they didn't need to hold on to these songs anymore, and it started getting lost. And then these researchers came back to it, are coming back to it to try to revive it because there's also something in their heritage that is in those songs that don't, like they say with any language, there are things that you can't translate. So if you're losing the songs, then you're losing the language, then you're losing parts of your tradition because they can't be translated. So it was something that let's say like Vanessa is reviving it through her performances and through her research. But it's I like the concept that it was like a power that they had, and maybe it still is a power that we can have if we can somehow find how to bring it back into our lives.
How do we do that? This is the question I had for myself, even like, okay, my kids know Incy Wincy Spider. And Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Like that's what they know. Not because those songs were even sung to me. They weren't. I actually now I'm wondering where did I pick that up from? The TV. But this is like the gap. I'm trying to really try and figure out where I feel like the women from the past would speak to their children, sing to their children in a way that gave them a sense of value, like even Shulamith's lullaby. It's all about that you are a blessing. You are a blessing. When do we sing to our children that they are a blessing? So these are the questions I kind of so appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you guys about and raise because yeah, how do we refine the voice of women where we express emotions through song? Um, because and pass down stories again. How do we revive that sense of connection, spontaneity, joy, grief, that these feelings can be expressed through song? I guess Spotify helps, but you know.
Well, actually, when we were talking about this episode, I really didn't think about this because I was thinking about, I don't know, bigger picture, like lamenters or like talking about life's wisdom. But I think, like you were saying, the word spontaneity just made me think of it is sometimes they do, like with little kids, these things just come up. So my my husband's grandmother sings the song, and now his like my mother-in-law also does sometimes sings to my son a song in Arabic. And like I don't think anyone remembered that song from the years that like my husband and his cousins were little kids to now when they're great grandkids, and it just came out because she's just like, this is a kid and I have this song for him that I brought from Libya, and she didn't think about the whole process, but it just spilled out. And now my son will actually sing it sometimes, like he'll just like hum it he's been around his great grandmother for a while. He'll just like hum it, and I'll like catch him singing it to himself, which is very funny and also amazing that this this boy who is one quarter Libyan, living in Israel, is singing in Judeo-Arabic from Libya. Like it's really amazing. So the song, we'll try to get a recording, but basically it starts double far mare tu, and I don't know the rest, but she goes up his hand like this, double far mare tu, and then whatever she says next, and then she tickles him at the end. Now, I don't know all the words, but the beginning means where is the mouse? And I guess the mouse is the one that's like climbing up. And he already knows to like, once it's like he wants it to start, but he doesn't want it to continue. Like he comes to put your hand there, and then he like runs away because he knows he's gonna get tickled. So but it really was spontaneous. She just started singing it because she was interacting with the little kid, and that's how she did in Libya.
That's beautiful. I love that. And he'll have that for the rest of his life. He'll have that connection and memory and the love. It's a love language song. And I guess, yeah, that's the deeper question I'm asking. How do we pass down this love?
How do you pass down the love? And the problem is there's the disconnect, like you said, between the language. So yes, he's singing it in Judeo-Arabic, and we can tell him for that. And all of these songs are in Judeo-Arabic, or just Arabic, some of them. So I think it's an amazing culture. I don't know if we can recreate that culture, because what would it mean for us? Kind of like, the way Aramaic went away and then people still use it in the Gemara, right, to learn Talmud. But how much does that actually relate to people, especially if you're singing about everyday things or you're singing? So how to maybe recreate the concept like you guys did with Eid al-Banat, a kind of a reinvention of it or a updating. So I just wanted to mention another person, Galit Dardashti and her sister Danielle Dardashti. They actually are singers, and it's interesting. Their father came from Iran, and she said they were a family of singers in America. He married an American, and they never sang any Persian songs. Think about it. They're singing folk songs. They went around singing in Spanish and French and, I don't know, Hebrew for sure, every language, and
Yiddish.
Yiddish, there you go. And the only 2 songs they ever sang, and that was only the parents, the kids never sang any of the songs, were 2 songs that the mother, who was completely Ashkenazi American, happened to find online and liked it. So now Dr. Galit Dardashti and her sister Danielle have created, if you haven't listened to it, I highly encourage it. It's called, the podcast is called Nightingale of Iran, about her father. And they're trying to bring back those songs, which are mostly men's songs. But the fact that he taught his daughters and he created it afterwards and he's talking about it now, I think helps to recreate and re-envision.
Right. Maybe that's the right word, is re-envision. There's a reason there was that silence. There's a reason her father never taught them the Persian songs. I think there's a lot of pain in silence. And there's a lot of story that we live in the now. And this is how I comfort myself, I suppose, is to take, so for example, with food, I know I don't cook as much as my grandmother did. I mean, I'd have to be in the kitchen all day to cook like her. But food is really integral in my family, and it's very important love language. I know it's given a lot to my kids. I think the same is with song. I guess it doesn't matter even if we put the Beatles on, that if we keep song as a love language and keep it alive and encourage emotions, encourage songs of happiness and grief, and share I know when I play Iraqi music, everyone tells me to shut it off. I'm afraid in my house. But on Shabbat, we do sing the Iraqi songs. So I guess each of us need to bring song in the way we can.
Yeah, and I wish, because they used to also write their songs. Like it wasn't just songs that they learned from their mothers, because it was a way of passing it on. They would write what they were trying to evoke, what they were trying to transmit to the next generation. And I don't know if we like, maybe because we lost this tradition of singing, we also lost, I don't know if I could write songs to to sing to my kids. But like you said, I think we can find definitely songs to just play for them so that they hear songs, and songs are something that stick for longer. Like, yeah, you can have a taste in your mouth for a really long time, but I think songs, even if you don't listen to them for years and years, somehow they're stuck in there. And if you just hear a piece of it later on, it sticks. And I want to just say, because this was really a cool thing that the Abraham mentioned, and this is something that also a reason that it got lost, because we really don't need this anymore. But they used to pass along information, like literally when it was World War II in Yemen, they didn't have newspapers, they didn't have obviously internet, they didn't have any way of knowing anything. And women would just be singing when they went to the well, when they went to wash things, whatever it was, they would be singing, and then women from other places would be there, and they would be singing the information of there's a war going on, and that's how they would pass it along. And I think part of that is that also part of these songs we don't need anymore, but there's something really beautiful, and like that's how women would communicate, and they would communicate, like I said, generally amongst themselves, at least in Yemen, but it was information that probably got to the men as well. And I don't know if they had another way of it getting to them.
So it's funny because since the war, I think we need some more together. So we might not be communicating information, although I do wish we sung the news instead of reading the news. It might come out more honest and with more soul. But I think music and songs that we hear from our parents and grandparents, songs that we even hear from I know there were a lot of songs created, especially in Israel during the war, which gave a lot of strength, and the youth sang together. And Galgalatz shared the best songs of the soldiers. And when you listen to their songs and realize, wow, these are the songs that give them strength, song is resilience. It gives a lot of soul and strength. So it's a big topic.
So I want to pass it over to you, our listening audience, our watching audience, and tell us, what do you think are the next steps? How can we reinvent it? How do you already reinvent it? How do you take it into your own homes? Write to us, talk to us. We want to know what you're thinking so that we can share it, because this is a communal effort here. Ayuni is not a 3-person effort. It is a communal effort, and we want you to share how you incorporate music, or how you would like to incorporate song into your life. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to hearing you and seeing you next week.
Thank you for listening. Ayuni, Voices of Our Jewish Grandmothers, is brought to you by Jewish Unity Through Diversity in partnership with Sarah Sassoon. Our executive directors are Drora Arusi, Sarah Sassoon, and Dalia Arusi Di Veroli. Our theme music is by Oshrat Chaim. Please rate and review this episode wherever you're listening to the podcast, and don't forget you can also watch on YouTube. And let us remind you that these stories live on when we share them. So please share your stories with us of women who held together families and communities throughout the ages in different lands. Email us at ayunivoices@gmail.com, and we might feature your story on the next episode. Stay tuned.